Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee. I'm going to go ahead and read all the standard language. Today is Monday, September 23rd at 5:30 p.m. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting is being recorded and potentially broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel. And the recording of this meeting will be available on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours of the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Public participation is encouraged, and public comments may be welcome during committee member discussions at the discretion of the chair. And generally, we welcome all comments from the public. With that, do we have any public comments this evening from the public or any board members? All right, well, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the RFP review. So let me just minimize this screen and share my screen. Oh, hit the wrong thing. There we go. Microsoft Word. Let me know if you guys can see this. All right, see thumbs up. Excellent. All right, so what we're trying to pick up where we left off last week was we went over some of the background, some of the scope in this RFP, and we left off on section where were we at? Oh, let me go ahead and admit Anna. Okay, we left off, really it was section 4, but let's pick up on section 3. So let me just make sure I have everything. We went over the deliverables of what we were looking for with the cost estimate, square footage, colored renderings. So we were going over section 3 and then 4, which are the minimum quality requirements. So let's just pick up there. And I will enlarge as well, so that way we all can see this, okay? A little big. All right. So quality requirements is the firm. So any firm or individual interest providing architectural engineering services for this project must meet the minimum quality requirements listed below. So what we're doing is, oh, hold on. Excellent. Christina joined us. Perfect. All right. And welcome to Christina. So we're going over the minimum quality requirements. So these are the things that everyone has to have in order to make it through that initial screening. So is the firm or consultant capable of providing the architectural engineering services as described in the project summary? 2, does the firm or consultant have a current license and registration by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a professional architect or engineer with a minimum of 5 years of experience in providing similar services to other communities? If not licensed as an architect by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, does the firm or consultant have 7 years of experience in the design and supervision of design? 3, has the firm consultant designed a minimum of 3 projects of similar scope in the range of $10,000 to $20,000? And last week, at our last meeting, I believe we reduced that down to that amount. 4, does a firm or consultant have a solid working knowledge of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts procurement laws, including public works building projects? Number 5, does the firm or consultant have a thorough knowledge of the Massachusetts State Building Code and related codes, the Americans with Disabilities Act, construction requirements for buildings, parking requirements, restroom requirements, and other ADA requirements for municipal use? 6, is the firm or consultant able to provide the site analysis and schematic designs as requested and the specifications? Number 7, has the firm or consultant supplied photographs or renderings of other design services provided to other similar communities or projects? Number 8, has the firm or consultant provided at least 3 references, including names, addresses, and phone numbers, to which the proposer has provided the architectural engineering services to other communities? And then number 9, is the firm able to commit the resources necessary to complete the services outlined in this RFP according to the timeline outlined in section 1.4? Bid schedule. Are there any additional requirements? This is pretty standard. Looking at our last When we last went out to bid, we borrowed some of that language from there. Are there any other things that we think we need to add in here or remove?
Michael Ray, I still think you should add something in there about the familiarity with historic preservation design, including familiarity with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation, because both of these buildings, Town Hall, Ritter, are historic structures. And, I think that the more that we call that out, the more likelihood that we're going to get a firm that really does have experience with historic preservation.
Um,
I agree with that. I think we've said in previous meetings that we really want to do an architecturally appropriate restoration job on both these buildings. So I think that that's an important thing.
all right. I'm hesitant to make reference to Department of Interior standards without having awareness of what those standards are.
Well,
But
I think you
I'm
could
familiar
word
with
it
them.
similar to question 4, where has the firm or consultant had experience with X, Y, and Z.
And the Secretary of the Interior standards are they're pretty cookbook, in terms of what an architect has to be able to do. And we put in there like Americans with Disabilities Act. It's almost the same kind of language associated with that.
I defer to Mr. Scolambrini on that. I don't I don't know. I don't know those standards either, but I understand what you're saying. Standard document like the ADA.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's nothing in there that would be a flag for the firm. Like it's not an extraordinary requirement for the firm if they've done work in accordance with the Department of Interior standards for historic preservation. And firms that do work that qualify for the federal tax credits associated with historic preservation, they have to work against those standards. So if we tell somebody that they have to be familiar with those standards, you're going to get a firm that has done work that qualified for, the historic tax credits, federal historic tax credits, which is, really kind of the most objective and I think the most important, standards for the firm. We don't want somebody who's been out there designing, supermarkets and storefronts and strip shopping centers. We want somebody who's had experience with designing projects, historic preservation projects that qualified for historic tax credits.
I guess I'm a little concerned because I don't want to dwell on a point because I know we're short on time, but I guess I'm concerned that, and I don't know this space at all, but I'm concerned that we're going to narrow the field too narrowly.
yeah.
Because
Greg,
I think that
I don't think you will, but I think what it'll do is it'll provide us with firms that have the type of experience that we need to have. I mean, familiarity with the Secretary of Interior standards is going to eliminate somebody who doesn't do historic preservation work. But there are plenty of firms, and hence we will get, a fair number of people interested in doing this work by calling that out. You will eliminate, those kinds of companies that do work, that's not related to historic preservation. But there will be, especially here in New England. I mean, this is a place where historic preservation is an important component of, municipal projects. So
Yep.
it's not like as if we're going to eliminate competition. We're not going to, reduce competition to just a handful of firms.
maybe we could say something like, make it objective and say something like, has the firm consultant had at least 5 projects that were deemed that involved historic preservation of buildings, period. Familiar or I don't remember that standard, but projects involving compliance with federal, whatever that was, preferred or something
So
like that.
I think
Just
when
so
we
we don't.
go, I'm sorry, Greg.
Just so we are getting people that have experience with historic preservations, but I just don't want to. I don't want to. And I understand what Mr. Scullenbrady is saying. I just don't want to. Just because something wasn't funded by a federal thing, it didn't require strict compliance with that. That doesn't mean that the town of Concord doesn't have, buildings that they're funding themselves out of local money that has no federal money that didn't require any, and that still might be a valid project. I'm just saying, I don't want to exclude people from bidding if they have work, but don't necessarily have the right work, the right work. That's all.
But
I
before,
think,
before Mr. Scullenbrady responds, if I can just jump in here, because what we're going to get into in a moment here is how we're going to evaluate the responses. And I think that as a standard, because again, right now we're just looking for yes and no's. If the answer is no, they're disqualified. So I think for a yes, does a firm consultant have familiarity and experience with historical or architectural preservation? I think that that's a good baseline yes. And then further down, when we get into how we're going to evaluate who's best qualified, that we can identify, those firms and groups that have worked with both the Mass Historic Society and federal as probably the best qualified. Does that sound fair so we can keep moving past this point?
yeah, well,
Brian, you're on mute. I'm not sure if you're talking to us or. No, okay. Sorry, Brian. I saw your mouth moving, but I wasn't sure
The
if you were
kids are running around like crazy today. Yeah.
All right. Matt, yes, please.
Hey, I just want to back up to number two. I don't think that we should be even entertaining people that aren't registered as architect or engineer. Maybe that implies that if you're not an architect, you need to be an engineer, but it's not stated that way. We need somebody with professional licensure so that their stamp carries their insurance and it covers the life of the building.
Yep, I was actually going to come back to that as well, Matt. I appreciate that. I agree. Are we all in agreement? Just general head nod that we should delete this required. Okay. All right. And then we were left off on 4. We're 5. We added in the 5, which is the firm consultant have familiarity, experience with historic architectural preservation. Is this a good catch-all? Later on, we can hit what does best qualified mean? Is this a good blanket standard?
it'll work for now.
Yeah, for me it is. I think I think so.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Okay. Now, the next area is how we're going to, this is how they submit the package. This is all pretty standard. We'll come back to that. Well, we don't have to come back to it. We can just quickly go through it. So how we're asking for these to be provided is a cover letter, overview of the proposer. I know we've all read this. We've all had this. So let me just quickly get through it. Cover letter, 1 or 2 pages, previous project experience, again, pretty standard, and then details on what that is, where they're listing, how much were these projects, the clients that were involved, and I'll touch up some of those amounts. References, reputation. This is when we're asking for those professional references. So when we're verifying, hey, have they provided it? We have it all here. Their product approach, how they plan on approaching this project, the proposed staffing and sub-consultants, what's going to be required for them to do the project, firm stability, capacity, again, pretty standard stuff, and then required forms, which are later in the RFP, pretty standard language. So it's a pretty standard package of how this will be assembled. None of us responded with comments on wanting this to be any different. So I just want to confirm that the standard package as presented, we're all in agreement with that. Again, anyone that's not, speak up, nods of the heads. Okay. All right. So evaluation criteria is really what we need to kind of hone in on in the next however many minutes. So we've already identified earlier what those minimum qualifications were. So if you were a no to any of those, you're not making it to this point. So if you are a yes, this is how we kind of go along. I will need to kind of go up and back and forth a little bit to go back to those questions just as a reference. So let's just start here. So general quality of response. So scoring rubric 1 through 4, 1 being unacceptable, 2 being acceptable, and then really we're evaluating if it's advantageous or highly advantageous. So an acceptable proposal is going to meet all the basic proposal requirements. We may require some follow-up for clarification and amplification of proposal. And advantageous is it meets all the requirements, including the format, understanding of the project, and there's no need for kind of follow-up. And then highly advantageous exceeds the requirements. This is kind of when people put together those printed booklets for us with the nice bound, bindings on them, that kind of stuff. We've already asked for everything digitally. So are we comfortable that this is just generally quality? Let's just work through it, then we'll come back. Previous project experience. So, and this is what we need to kind of hone in on a little bit. Management of fewer than, and we said 3 projects. So previously, so let me do that. Management of fewer than 3 projects, similar projects, and or I would be okay saying management of fewer than 3 similar projects and or fewer than 2 or public projects. I'm just plugging this in. We're going to walk through it. Acceptable being proposal demonstrates proposals efficient and effective design and management of at least and again we had changed this to 3 previously. 3 projects less than we'll say 5 million. And 2 were public. Advantageous proposal demonstrates proposal efficient, effective design and management of 5 similar projects. Sorry. 2 were public.
Do we want to add in maybe historical component here too, like that they were also historical?
I do. I want to add in a whole nother insert rows below. Okay. And then we'll say 5 similar projects, and we'll say 10.
Just real quick,
Yep.
do we want to do we just want to put like a greater than
Yeah.
on the cost? Just why penalize someone because they did $100 million
Yeah.
historically
Yeah, I would agree.
historic preservation project?
All right, so let's go with acceptable greater than 10 million and 2 were public. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's better. I like the greater than language better than the
And
range.
management of 5 similar projects, and we'll say greater than 10 million and
I think you wanted to keep the greater than for the projects too, so that they can do 2, 3, 4, whatever. So greater than 1, greater than 2, at least 2. Yeah, something along those lines.
okay. And then the highly advantageous proposer proposes efficient, effective design and management of at least we'll say greater than of more than 5. Excuse me. You guys can see when I'm hitting wrong buttons over here, my emojis start popping up. Greater than 10 million. Okay. So
Yeah, maybe just say greater than 5, management of greater than 5 similar project. Yeah, yeah. The people we're looking for are, yeah, people that have extensive experience, highly advantageous.
okay. In that case, I want to draw, I think 4 is acceptable to me. And it captures 5, but do we want to drop it to 4 or do we want to keep it at 5? Because
I think this is really granular. I think if you
Yep.
got I think it's going to be very unlikely that we're going to get someone that's done 3 that hasn't done 5. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you were talking about 15 to 5, it might be different, but I think the difference between 3 and 4 is so different. I don't have an opinion. I think like the way you got is probably fine.
Any other comments? Any other thoughts? Feel free to just jump in. Don't raise your hand since I'm typing. Just unmute yourself and just jump in here. So for project experience, historic preservation experience, unacceptable is no experience with historical properties. What are we going to say? Well, what are we going to say is acceptable?
I'd say experience with historic properties. And then for the advantageous and the highly advantageous, I think highly advantageous would be has designed projects which have received historic tax credits. That would be under the highly advantageous.
I
And
agree, but what did we say that was the qualification though? We just said experience with, yeah, that
Yeah.
demonstrated experience.
Right,
We didn't give a
right,
number.
right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if they pursued projects that receive federal tax credits, you're operating at the very highest level of historic preservation, of design projects that have received historic tax credits, because in some cases they may have done projects which have received historic tax credits at a state or local level. And then advantageous would be familiar with the Department of Interior standards for historic preservation. And now the difference being that they know how to do it, but they haven't actually done a project that received tax credits.
No, that would be under the next the advantageous.
Yeah.
So you'd want the demonstrated experience with historic properties and are familiar with federal. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. Like you can do projects that are in compliance with the Secretary of Interior standards that don't get federal tax credits. The federal tax credit is not federal tax credits, but historic tax credits, because I've done projects that have gotten both federal, state, and local tax credits. So that's like the cream of the crop. You have really good experience demonstrated by the fact that you delivered tax credits to the project's owner. Now, in our case, we're not going to get tax credits because we're a public entity, which is okay. So, I mean, I think that this gives us something that we can and we're letting them know that this is an important piece of experience that they have to have.
Okay.
And we won't limit this to like 1 or 2 companies. There'll be multiple companies that can meet these requirements.
All right. We all in agreement here before we go down to references and reputation. All right. So references and reputation, any references which indicated caution or expressed any reservations, I wouldn't say unacceptable. I'd reword this. Any references which indicated caution, I'd add I mean, I think that sometimes there can be personality conflicts, and sometimes, someone can express that as a reservation. I don't think that that should be a disqualifier. But any reference which indicated caution, unwillingness to rehire, and challenges meeting requirements, we can find a way to word that, but that's unacceptable. Acceptable is good or would repeat recommendations, advantageous, outstanding from all reference checks, and highly advantageous, outstanding recommendations from all reference checks, at least 2 of which involved design of municipal grounds. Are we comfortable with this kind of evaluation?
I am. I just wonder on some of these if we're gonna, I mean, well, um, if we're not giving enough enough difference between highly advantageous, my sense is most people that are going to bid on this are going to look and say that they're not even going to bid if they don't have that. Like most people are going to be between 3s and 4s.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to have a lot of, we're going to have a lot of ties. And I guess that's up to the committee to settle then. But
Yeah, I
I
mean,
just,
so
I
far,
worry that there's not enough room between generally on the advantageous and the highly advantageous. But I guess that's the way it is. I retract. I'm talking out loud. I'm sorry.
hey Matt, I know you have to get running here soon. Do you how if I can may ask, differentiation here between highly advantageous and advantageous. Do you see here we can throw in any changes here?
No, I kind of agree with Greg's comment there that most of the people that apply here are going to be 3 or 4. And with I think it looks good, and I can't really honestly think of anything specific to differentiate 3 from 4 other than what you got. But as you said, I do have to go right now, and I think we've still got a quorum, right?
We do. Thank you, Matt.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
All right. Technical and management approach. This is the project approach. So this is where we have a lot more discretion to evaluate. And I think that as we do this evaluation, we can make the decision that we're not going to give the same rate. Well, I mean, we can look at it, we can look at the language that's here, but I think we can make the decision as doing this one more comparatively, in which we're kind of evaluating it and saying, hey, I like this approach more than that approach from what we have. But what we have is that for unacceptable, proposed did not provide adequate response to most of the items in section 3 and 4 of the RFP, and that's unacceptable. Acceptable is that proposer provided an adequate response that addressed most of the items. So then we get into advantageous, which is good response that they addressed in most of the items, and highly advantageous is that they addressed all of the items and provided an excellent response. And again, project approach is part of the packet of information in terms of how they're going to say, yeah, we're going to take this on. This is how we're going to go about doing it. For proposed,
Sorry, I know we're trying to roll through this, but I just feel like if in section 3 we've asked that we've set a 10 standards by which they have, the qualifications that there shouldn't be acceptable and above should be they met all of them. They shouldn't have met most of them.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think
If we've asked them that they have to be qualified in these 10 things, I think it was 10 in that section, then acceptable shouldn't be they've met most of them. It should be that they've met all of them. So I feel like we need to recalibrate here a little bit. Addressed all, yeah, this is going to be a hard.
it is. It's hard to evaluate what's adequate versus good versus excellent.
Yeah. Right.
Greg, I think that in this proposed staffing, we could really start to set some discrimination between really good, the advantageous, acceptable.
Yeah, all right. All
And
right,
then
that's fine. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
being too
No,
persnickety.
I think that, it'll be the combination of all of these evaluation criteria that will eventually, drive us to somebody who may stand above the others. The other thing is, we may end up with a lot of good qualified providers. But the one thing that I always find is that when you start talking about the team, who's the project head, who is going to assist. The one thing that I want to see in here is to say that the leader is going to be dedicated 100% to this project, okay? And that the staff will be working for him, and that would be like the highly advantageous. So the advantageous would be, that the leader is going to be working 75%, acceptable is 50%, and the unacceptable is, something less than 50%. When my experience in hiring AEs has always been that they put their A team up there, but when you start working with them on a day-to-day basis, they may not have their A team in place. And what you have to do is to make sure in this evaluation process that you say, we want the player who you said is going to be the project lead to be the guy that's going to be the guy or the gal that's going to be on this thing 100% of the time or 75% of the time, as advantageous. And
I don't know
then-
what, I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. We never do that.
What? Yes,
I'm just
that's
kidding.
exactly right, Greg. You know what I'm talking about. You
I know exactly what
what-
you're talking about.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Happens to me all the time.
And you know what? It happened to us with DiGiorgio.
Yes.
It did.
Yeah.
It happened to us with DiGiorgio. We got the A team that came to propose, and then something else when they, so that's a
I
good.
think that was partly driven by the fact that, you were engaging with DiGiorgio at the time they were being bought out.
Yep. But
And I
still,
think that created a huge amount of pandemonium for them
It
in
did.
terms of staffing. But
did.
then if we say in this qualification evaluation piece that your guy has to be there, 100% of the time, and then if they start to do something different, like they got a different project that they think is going to make them more money or it's going to be bigger, and they pull that person off to to comply or to do something with another project, we can go back to them and say, hey, look, you told us that this guy was going to be on here. Now there's always extenuating circumstances. Project lead could get run over by a bus after we award the contract. And then we could go back to them and say, hey, we told you that was a really important piece of why we picked you. So now you got to come back and give us somebody who is similar in qualifications, dedicated for a similar amount of time for our effort.
Yep.
So how I'm breaking this in is that the project lead is part of the interview, that I'm putting that in for acceptable, advantageous, and highly advantageous. Because I agree. I mean, this has happened to me numerous times where you interview with one team and it's not the team you end up working with, and you were wowed by the people who you interviewed with, and you were not wowed by the people you were working with. And so if we say that, project lead's part of the interview and that's basically the standard, that way, that kind of bait and switch, we can eliminate that. But as far as their commitment to the project, kind of going beyond that, project lead's part of the interview and will attend, do we want to tie it to attendance with us, or do we want to, tie it to work product? So how do we differentiate there?
The project leader is a part of, for highly advantageous, the project leader is the representative at every meeting. Not, 25% of the meetings or 50% of the meetings, but the project leader is at every meeting we have.
Yeah, that's a good, that is good. Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard to do. As speaking as a small business owner, it's hard to do that. But
It is.
that's
But the projects that I have seen really good to be really good successful projects, it's because they gave you somebody good to lead,
yeah.
and they stick with it. They don't show
Yeah.
up for the first meeting and then you never see them again.
No, you're absolutely, this is, this is good. You're absolutely right. And if nothing else, it's going to set this section will set the expectation. You might get people restructuring their internal processes to make this work, but all depends on how hungry people are to bid. But
But good firms, Greg, they'll know that and they'll plan accordingly.
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I get that on not a lot, but a percentage of proposals I write. You can tell people are paying attention because they ask me specifically, are you going to represent me personally at the meetings, or is it going to be one of your staff? So that, you can tell the people that are paying attention, the clients that are paying attention, because they demand that. So I think that tells people that we're paying attention.
That's exactly right. And then, we'll get a better quality project
Yeah.
by picking someone who understands that.
And it's a continuity thing too.
Yes, it is.
Someone that's been there from the very beginning, putting the proposal together, sticking it all the way through the end. So it's a big deal.
And they know what they got to do in order to make money. I never want to hire a firm that's not going to make money. We want them to make money, because when they don't make money, you don't get a good project designed out of them.
That's true.
So with
Yeah,
that
that's true.
distinction, and the way I did it was I went from all 75, 50%, and then unacceptable, they're not there. Or let me add in this. All right, were there any other modifications? And thank you for joining in, Dave. We were joined by Mr. Allison, but he just signed off and you just joined in. So we're going over how we're evaluating these criteria, and we'll do a quick review at the end. All right, sub-consultants, the need for sub-consultants should be minimal. Should be minimal. But I think if they need to outsource some portion of this, I think it's worthwhile to have some language in here, some differentiating language. All right. And then firm stability and capacity, this almost becomes like everyone gets a 3 or a 4 for sure in this category. I would, generally speaking, in which, for the most part, this is a pretty straightforward thing to evaluate in the packet. So, I mean, everyone says they're in good standing, taxes are up to date, that they're not in the middle of any lawsuits or, anything grievous. So, I mean, people tend to, in my experience on the other end of this, or on the same situation we're now, but I find that I've never encountered a vendor who provides a proposal that doesn't make themselves look highly advantageous when it comes to this category. All right, and then the final things are just the notes about, the price proposal form, certificate of non-collusion, that, no one's getting any kickbacks here, tax compliance, that they're in good standing with the state, certificate of authority, that they, have the ability to do what we're asking them to do. As far as the interview goes, and we are incorporating interview if invited, and interviews matter. So we just want to take a moment to just evaluate this one again, of how we're going to evaluate the interview process. And then the last thing we'll comb through is how we're going to go through the selection process, which is section 6. I need to just take a quick little, like 1 minute break. So while we read this, I'll be right back. You guys want to chat, feel free.
Hey, guys, one question here. Do we want to add in anything? I'm not sure exactly where we do it, but it seems like a common criticism we get on these buildings like 2 or 3 years out after we build them is, I can't believe these people, they spent, $50 million on a brand new middle high school, and they didn't even calculate what it was going to cost to operate and maintain it. is there something we should add in here to this scope of work that specifically asks the consultant to identify or estimate long-term operation and maintenance costs, and also do an analysis on building envelope efficiency or something like this? I just feel like if we are going to invest money in a building in this day and age, we should at least give a nod to energy efficiency, and we should certainly know what it's going to cost to operate and maintain it. Maybe it's in there. I just that's the only thing I can think of that we haven't talked about that I can recall.
No, we did not.
Yeah.
I think we put in here was energy modeling.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. All right.
But
I don't know.
as you look at this section J, Greg, how can we reword this? So
this is under which, this is under the,
this is the actual scope. This
oh
is
yeah,
actually
yeah. The deliverables. Yeah. Maybe an estimate of yearly operation and maintenance costs, or you know,
Just phrase it. What about just phrasing it as yearly energy cost? You know, what is it
Yeah.
going to cost for electricity? What's it going to cost for heat?
yeah.
And what kind of heat? What are they proposing for a heat system? Because right now the state is really anxious if you do mini splits.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell them that. That tells me whether or not they're paying attention to the state.
Yeah. Just something that quite frankly, that we can stand up there and say, when in face of the criticism, we can say, yeah, listen, we had it as part of our scope of work, and here's what we came up with, just so it's part of the discussion.
I agree. I think we've been asked that before. What's the energy cost going to be, or what's the difference in cost going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I sat on the committee that built the middle high school, and we got it 2 years or probably less than 2 years after it opened. So I just feel like just something in there that, and the reason I thought about it now is because it might be a consultant, right? It might be a sub-consultant that the architect might want to bring in to do an evaluation. But I'm glad I see the energy modeling, and I think that's good. I forgot that we had that.
Okay. Does this capture? I'm sorry.
The Air Force had energy MBTU standards that we had to meet for projects that we were getting designed. And I'm wondering if does the state not have any minimum requirements in the building codes? I thought they did, because I remember hearing from our building commissioner that there was concern about doing historic preservation and meeting the energy standards required by the Massachusetts building codes for an old historic building. And, so I think that, you could set a standard. I mean, it's, like I said, the Air Force would say, when this project's designed, it has to meet, you have to be able to operate this building with this many MBTUs per square foot. I mean, but isn't it part of the building code? I mean, I'm not familiar.
There is, yeah, you're absolutely right. Maybe I'm getting too far afield there. I just feel like it's more of a, I want to make sure we address the question that will inevitably come about, or the criticism that will inevitably come, that, oh geez, you built this building, but you didn't calculate how much it was going to cost you to operate, to keep it in service. I guess that's what I mean. Like, can we come up with a budget for annual, at least energy costs? Maybe we can't get a handle on how much it's going to cost us to fix light bulbs and door knobs and stuff like that. But, at least energy costs, I guess.
I think we have to be realistic at this phase of how in depth this detail is going to be. I mean, it's unlikely that we're gonna, we're gonna have rough ideas, right? But in terms of what is the actual boiler that is being spec'd for this building, I don't expect that we're going to have that kind of finality from this
Well,
process.
that's true. Yeah, you're right. That's true.
And so, and
Yeah.
it's that kind of finality that's going to identify what the long-term, operating costs are. And I think that as we go through that phase, then it would be important for us to say, hey, let's differentiate between those pieces of equipment that have longer lifespans, but may need more cost year to year to maintain versus those pieces of equipment that maybe have a 20% shorter lifespan. But, as far as maintenance goes, it's next to nothing. So I think
Yeah,
that,
you're right. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Yeah, you're right. We're probably we're going to get to a design development stage, not a construction development document stage. So you're probably right on that. All
But I
right.
think we should call out the fact that we're looking for this. That way it's identified early that we are looking there. All right.
No, I think I forgot that we had the energy modeling. I think that's good.
All right. I see someone's trying to get in. Let me admit. Okay. All right. Are we on, by the way, can anyone, I don't know if any of our callers can tell us, are we on public access right now? If you guys can chat, let us know that. It's not, I always like to know when we're live Zooming or live streaming, because that always opens the door to, people in the public watching and then wanting to come in, which is always a good thing. All right, so I'm going to skip back to Greg. Does this satisfy what your?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I'm getting a little bit too granular on this analysis, I think. So I think as long as we're giving a nod to ongoing energy efficiency in this process, I think that's uh, at a minimum what I'm asking for, and I think we got it.
All right. So while we're here, something that I thought of was last week we had said we had this note in here, number 3, about in the last 5 years. And I wanted to push this timeline out because I think that a lot of municipalities, ourselves included, have kind of delayed some public projects over the last several years because of the high cost of borrowing and the high cost of construction. So I just wanted to see if we're okay while we're here in section 3 of bumping this out to 7 years, these products within the last 7 years.
Fine with me.
All right, any objection to this? I'm looking.
No.
If anything, in the last couple times we've done this, we've had trouble getting bidders. So I mean, I think we had 3 the last time around, but it'd be great to have more than 3. So, yeah, it'd be great to have 10 and narrow it down to 3 interviews, kind of thing. So if anything, I feel like we should cast a wider net. So I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, we're gonna scroll back to where we left off. Staffing, we've went through that. Firm stability, finalist interview. Okay, so we left off on how we're going to evaluate the interviews. And then the last thing is just to make sure that our selection process, that we have that note. Then we'll just go back over the timeline, which is at the very beginning of this whole thing. All right, so in the interview, what we're saying is unacceptable is that the proposal did not adequately describe the process or work product. Staff were not present. Interview, I'll modify to say project lead. Is not present. Interview, acceptable. Proposal describes the process and the work product. The staff who would be involved were not present. So I'm going to eliminate that because that's going to be the new unacceptable. We'll
Yeah, I
keep
don't know.
that.
I like that. I like that there because you said project lead not present at the unacceptable, but oh, I see. But I feel like
Do you think we should keep that note?
well, at some point, yeah, well, so do you want to see the entire staff of someone's organization at the interview?
No. My
Yeah.
opinion as one member is no. I think the project lead is who we definitely need to interview.
Yeah, all right. You want to say proposal described the process in the, yeah, and so you want to say that in this case, you want to say that the project lead was present at the interview,
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, and then I think it's following. The next one up is some of the staff who would be involved is there, yeah. Project lead and some of the staff, I'd say, on that 3, yeah.
All right, and then highly advantageous.
Maybe say all staff who would be involved was present. Maybe say all staff who would all staff
Would play a critical role.
yeah, who would play, yeah, something like that, just because, you probably don't need to bring the
Yeah, not everybody.
draft person or, someone that's not gonna. Oh, critical stuff, yeah, critical stuff, yeah.
Okay,
I like that. I think that's good.
all right. And then selection process, after the submissions have been reviewed to determine if they meet the minimum quality requirements, the Municipal Building Design Committee will rank the non-price proposals using the evaluation criteria. The town reserves the right to select and award products to the highest ranked firm with the best price. The town requires a person who will be the principal contact to participate in the interview. The town manager is the awarding authority for the project. Municipal Building Design Committee will be reviewing proposals and making recommendations based on his evaluation of qualified proposals to the town manager. And that's because the town manager is the procurement officer for the town. Following interviews, the highest ranking firm with the best price will be awarded the project. All right, I'm going to scroll up. Yep.
Sorry, we did ask for a price proposal here too.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So I think, let me go backwards because I think initially we did, but I thought after meeting with Julie, we had changed that. Let me scroll back to I thought we had changed. Let me flag that. Let me flag that. I'm not
Because
gonna.
it really what's driven me, I guess is the right word, crazy in the last couple times I've done this is that we selected a firm based on qualifications, to my view, almost irrespective of their price. And then we negotiated the price. And lo and behold, the price that we negotiated was exactly the price that we published on the RFP.
Of course.
And to me, it's like, if we're going out for a $150,000 proposal and we get someone that's going to meet all the qualifications and gives us $100,000, we should be, delivering that savings, quote unquote, back to the taxpayer. We
I
shouldn't be
agree.
just writing a blank check to these desirable firms.
So the way that I wrote it initially, for there to be yes, for them to have to put price proposals separate, so that way we can do the
Okay.
evaluation. And then once we make the determination of who the best qualified are, then we open up the price proposals and then we identify from there. So
So do we have the, so I guess my question is, do we have the ability, if we have someone that, let's just say someone that gets all threes, right? And it's advantageous. And I'm just going to make this up. It's $100,000 thing. And we have someone that's all threes that gives us $75,000. And we have someone that's all fours that gives us $100,000. Do we have the ability to select the one that's at our discretion, to select the one that's all threes, advantageous, maybe a little bit less score, but has a better cost proposal?
Yes. So
Okay.
the way that I've tried to phrase this, because typically, with public procurement, you're going with the lowest price.
Right.
But in this case, what matters is not just the lowest price. What matters is, can they do the work to the highest standard?
Yeah.
So the intent here is that we will walk through this, we'll identify our highest ranked, 1 and 2, and then we open up the prices so that way, if we have someone that we're saying throws it off the charts, they're number 4s across the board, but they're at 225,000, and then we have someone that's number threes across the board, but they're at 125,000. It gives us the flexibility to hire the number three across the board.
Okay, so do we want to rephrase this section that you have here, the last bullet in 6? Do we want to rephrase that somehow? Because what if the highest ranking firm doesn't have the best price?
What I would recommend is you say, following the interview, the best value firm will be awarded the project. The firm providing the best value to the town will be awarded the project.
What I would recommend is that we, following our approval of this tonight, I'm going to present it to Julie. I'll flag this as language that I'm going to ask Julie to be right about and confirm, so that way we get the correct statutory language, because this section, it is statutory language that needs to go in here.
Yeah, all right. If there's, to the extent, yeah, I get that, but to the extent that there's ability to give us, to modify that a little, to do what we're hopefully, I just feel like it could be impossible to determine the last bullet here.
Yep.
The highest ranking firm might not have the best price.
Yep.
So I just, I don't know, that's always been something that's difficult for me to understand in this whole process, to be quite frank with you. So I get that it's statutory, but I just hope that we can really leverage our ability to take someone that we want, someone that meets the qualifications or exceeds the qualifications, but we also want to get the best price for the taxpayer.
I highlighted the wrong section. So I'm going to bring this to Julie's attention when I meet with her, and then we'll make sure that the language that's noted here is the language we want it to be. I'm getting a call from my other half, so I need to pause for myself, just step away for a second. But if we can go backwards, because I want to just pick up this timeline that's not finalized. So this is the schedule. I need to make some updates to it. And I did update some of it, but let's just look at this for a second. I know that this date I didn't plug in, which was when the questions need to come back. But we're going to need to identify this, lock this thing down. So if you can just give me literally a minute, I'll be right back. And if you guys want to keep talking, feel free. Again, I'm just stepping away for a second.
Greg, when I was in the A&E procurement business for the Air Force, we never selected somebody based on their price. We always selected, and this is a little bit different. We would select somebody based on their qualifications, and then we would come back and we would negotiate their rates, and then negotiate rates for the specific projects that we wanted them to design. So it is a dicey piece, but I also agree that if you had somebody who got all threes, but was significantly lower in cost, that you would want to have the option to pick somebody like that. The other thing, I'm perplexed by Massachusetts law, because hiring AEs is different than getting a firm fixed price from a construction contractor. So we got to figure that out.
Yeah.
And it's a big.
I think the way that it's been done is the way that you just described it, Tony, that you select on qualifications and you negotiate price. I guess my problem is, frankly, in the past, I don't feel like there's been any negotiations. I feel like the negotiations on the part of the town have been non-existent, and if we had $200,000 to spend, that's what the contract was written as.
Well, that was, you also have to remember that I was in a world where the engineers would pick the qualified vendor, and then the contracting people would determine the best price. So there was and the contracting officer was, that person, he had a lot of power to go in and say, show me your books. I want to see how how much you charge
Yeah.
other clients. You can't charge us more, and then you're charging other clients. So that negotiation piece was no small task in order to get the best value for the Air Force.
So I think that what I will, if I'm going to ask the committee once we approve this for permission to make additional modifications with Julie as it relates to this subject. But the way that we had initially talked about it, and I hear exactly what you're saying, Tony and Greg. But I agree that, all of our meetings are televised. So if someone's willing to invest just a little bit of time to figure out how much money is appropriate or allocated for this, it's not hard for them to do. And then they're going to give us that price. So I think the way that we've approached it is that they're giving us their bid, and then separately they're giving us their price. So that way, when on the front end of this, we know what that price, we're not going to look at it, but that we have that price there. So that way, what Greg is saying, which has been, in my opinion, true, that we minimize the opportunity for that to occur. When the firm knows that we're not just looking at the qualifications, but we are also considering the price proposals, and that we're not going to look at those prices till we figure out who's qualified. That then forces them into a situation where they can put their best price forward. Other than, versus us going through a process. It's kind of like you go to buy a car. You fall in love with a car, then like, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you half your house. Then you're like, oh, do I really want this car? It's kind of to prevent us from falling in love with a vendor that we think is going to be wonderful, and be willing to go substantially above what is a fair price. So with the board's permission, I will ask for it later in our motion to approve, that we can make these modifications. But this timeline really needs to be worked out in part with Julie. What I want to get confirmation on is usually there's a deadline in here where they can submit questions. It's going to be before the 20th for sure. Because usually the questions need to go back out. So usually that deadline is something like, the 16th, and the answers to the questions go out on the 18th. Or, that's usually roughly kind of the time frame. But I just
Michael
wanted
Ray,
to, yes,
can you just edit the first three dates for the years?
of course. Oh, I
Year
put
two off
41
the
in
first three.
there. Sure. 24, 24,
Thanks.
24.
That was
All
it.
right.
That's all I saw.
Looking at the schedule, so we do have a meeting in November on the 4th, and if we're able to, basically, we would need to create some time between the 23rd. That's let me make sure I'm looking at this correctly. Yeah, so we need to create some time over the course of like a week and a half, to be able to evaluate and then identify who we're going to interview. And then that would then allow us to conduct those interviews on the 4th, be able to award the contract by the end of that week, and get them all under contract by mid-November. A critical component of this is that any funds that aren't expended are going to be returned back to the select board for reappropriation, and there needs to be adequate time to do that. And so the soonest we can hire, the better it will be in that regard. So the anticipated date for interviews, the 4th, that way a contract can be committed that week. And then the first meeting then with the vendor would occur on the 18th, which would be the third Monday of November. And then I just plugged in kind of a tentative kind of meeting schedule, November, December, January. There's going to be more. I think that in total, I noted somewhere in here that we're looking for like 8 meetings in total. But all right.
So I'd note that the 11/4 is election day, I think. So that's probably not going to be a good day.
Oh, nope, not at all. Not at all. If we all look at our calendars, and I know I'm asking, and I know we're missing a couple of people, but I want to confirm we still have our quorum here. All right, I see me.
So I think 11/4 is good
No,
because that's
you're right.
Monday.
I'm sorry.
Tuesday is the election day. Tuesday,
Yeah,
November.
you're right. I just looked. You're right. I'm sorry. I retract that. 11/4 is a Monday.
All right. Okay. So
Thanks, Brian.
and then all right. So What I will do, obviously we have to get the font, organized here. But I think that I will resend this out to all the members. And then I will meet with Julie. I think we're meeting tomorrow. I'll meet with Julie tomorrow. This needs to go to the central register by Thursday. So, I'll meet with her tomorrow. If there's any additional modifications, then we can make those, and then I can also distribute them back out. And what I mean by modifications, staying with the intent of what we have. Again, Julie already did a review of this. She has a couple questions for us that she had highlighted, such as the schedule, other things. We should be in a good spot, but I want to make sure that I have the flexibility to make minor modifications, so that way we can get this out the door this week. All right, are there anything else we want to review in this today? Greg, Brian, Christina.
Michael Ray, when you send this out, are you gonna send us a copy of what gets sent out?
I will.
Okay.
I'll send you this draft tonight, and then that way, if there's anything that you forgot about but want to comment on, you can send that to me. I'll stop screen sharing. That way you can send that over to me, and then whatever the final version that gets published, I will distribute back out as well.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
great. Yeah,
I'm all right with the RFP. I think I had a discussion with you after the last meeting. I'm totally on board with moving this forward, and I think we have a good opportunity here with the funds that are in place. But I just want to make sure that we don't get into a situation like we have in the past, where we are trying to bring a funding project, a funding article to the town at the 11th hour, and we put everybody in, like the finance committee and others and the select board, and we put them in a position that, they don't have enough time to review. So I'm a little concerned that we looking ahead at I get it's only September, but when you extrapolate out the timeline, and you think about when we'd have to have things in place for the spring town meeting, that I guess I just want to say that out loud, that I don't want to get us in a situation where we were in the past, where we're trying to scramble at the last minute to get funding articles before the town. So hopefully we can avoid that going, with this process.
Yeah, I mean, it's still in the general, yeah. So I reached out to the chair of the finance committee to see about getting scheduled to meet with them. I think that, we all know why we're in the position that we're in. I thought we had great momentum behind this project. And we were, steadily working, toward this. We had so many meetings with so many members of the community. And then we kind of hit a pause button when we had, the tax stuff pop up. And then, the override discussions pop up as well. I know that we kind of hit a pause, but I think that what we need to do is, now's the time. I mean, any capital plan that's coming before the town in the spring hasn't been proposed yet. And it's going to get proposed over the next couple of months. So, now is the time to start socializing, what these property needs are going to be. So I think that we need to re-socialize this. And that means, meeting, I'm glad that Tony's been a critical part of this, but I think that it means going to an APDC meeting and we have the APDC rep, which I think most people know is above and beyond our requirement, but we want to make sure that we're incorporating all key players into the process. So that way, this is inclusive. So I think that we need to meet with the APDC, go over the project ideals with them, when we start coming up with what is this all going to look like, get their feedback into that. I do think that we need to meet with the finance committee to just get the conversation going of, hey, we're gearing up for the spring. And, in our rough kind of ceiling here, I think we all know it's about 15 million. And so, you start socializing that with the awareness that we'll have better numbers come January, and while the warrant is still open and before the warrant closes. And then also with the select board, I think that we've had some change in membership. Two of our members at least don't have a lot of experience with the length of time that we have spent going through all of this. And, this committee was created by the select board. It does report to the select board. It is advisory, at least, to the select board. And so, I think that we need to do that. And I've talked to the chair of the select board as well about getting this onto the October agenda. So that way we can re-socialize it. So I think that we need to spend the next month re-socializing it. I know that Brian kind of leads up the Facebook component of that. And that's, also, which has been on pause for a bit, but that's also like getting that information back out there, getting the public engaged in the process. And I think that, we have, basically 8-9 months right now, and to kind of keep the buzz going, keep the conversations going. So I do think that now is the time, but I agree that, when you drop something and pick it back up, a lot of people in town have changed. Some people have moved, new people have come in. We just got to get this on the forefront of people's minds. And keep in mind that, the school committee is, looking to make some improvements at Turkey Hill. And there have loosely been discussions and conversations, probably more than loosely, that the funding request may be a combined request. So that way it's one ask to borrow with two projects. Or two components of the project. The other thing, and I don't see Chris Ruth with us today, but at our next meeting, I am inviting Chris Ruth, and I'm probably getting someone into a public comment here, but I am inviting Chris Ruth to be with us because his assessment of TC Passios has changed. I know that when we started this project, we were looking at how to reuse TC Passios. And again, I had that conversation with the school committee that basically said, hey, look, we have a problem with what to do with old schools. And if they get turned over to the town without needing millions of dollars of initial and immediate investment, then the buildings become more viable while we spend 7-10 years figuring out what to do with them. Bottom line there is that, Turkey Hill needs some investment and not to improve the programming of the building, but to improve the building systems in the building. And it just makes sense that we come forward as one community with a community request for buildings. But I know that they're actively in that process right now, and they may be coming closer to the 11th hour based on the timeline of the RFP. But again, anything dealing with kids, I think, does get a little more flexibility than other things. Tony, you have your hand up, but you don't have to raise your hand. You can just talk.
Has the budget task force, are they aware of what we've been discussing in terms of spending, roughly $250,000 in AE funds with the prospect that we come to the annual town meeting in May with a much bigger ask? I mean, I think that have they been a part of this process? I'm not worried about the APDC, but I am worried about the budget task force because they got a lot of issues on their plate trying to figure out, how they're going to proceed with the town being able to afford the things that it has to pay for day in, day out.
Yeah, the short answer to that is, the chair of the budget task force is part of the select board, and I think is aware of what we're trying to do. But I think I hear you. We can probably be a little more explicit. I understand their scope to be more, and I could be wrong on this, but I understood their scope to be more looking at synergies across departments of duplicated or replicated services and trying to identify ways to minimize that. But they could have a more expansive scope than I'm aware of today. But I can reach out to Renee, Selectman Imke, and discuss that with her.
Can I ask
wonder
you?
too, I was just thinking too, if it's more of an override concern too with that committee where this is more long-term borrowing.
Yeah.
So that was my question to ask a dumb question. The budget task force, was that what the select board member suggested we do to prep for a possible override, to kind of look at things macroscopically? That's the budget task force that came out of that discussion?
Correct. And correct.
Okay.
That's what I understand. That's what
And
I
that's and pardon my naivety here. That's ongoing. The select board did charter that process.
Yeah, they're
and
they're actually
that's
meeting right
working.
now.
That's great. I think that's really
They're
good.
meeting tonight.
To Tony's point, and I think you're saying the same thing, Michael Ray, that let's get out in front, let's get it, let's request agenda time with all these people. Because, and just make ourselves available at the very least, make ourselves available to answer questions or to ask questions to them and see how we fit in and see how things fit in, because I you know, we're all in the same team here as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yep.
I know that's easier said than done with the time constraints that you have. I get it. But I just, you know, just I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, like we've done in the past, we try to just, you know, transparency should be key here, should be forefront here, I
Yeah.
guess. Is
I
my
think
point.
meeting with the select board, definitely presenting to the select board, giving them updates, I think would be important. And gets us out there.
Yeah, and more people watch those meetings. All right, so I did put on the agenda, and I know that we did get some minutes from Brian, but I didn't list them on the agenda, so I will do that for our next meeting. And I'm trying to target that we meet again on our again regular schedules. That should be October the 7th. It's Monday the 7th. Do the first and third Mondays at 5:30? Do those times still work for everyone? And Christina, it's good to see you. I don't know if you were able to chime in here to let us know, but what do you got, Greg?
I was just looking at my calendar.
Okay. They
We
still
talking
work
about
for
5:30?
5:30. Yeah, and in October we should rigidly be done by 6:30. And I think we'll pick up the times once we get into November when we start, you know, the hiring and working with the team.
I will note, I'm going to be gone between November 7th and November 16th. I'm going to be out of the country.
Luckily, we don't have any meetings in that time. So
Great. As luck would have it.
All right, so I'll shoot an email out. I'm also going to try to make some contact with Mr. Gray. I know that we've missed him from our last meeting. All right. Okay, so I need a motion to approve and publish the RFP as discussed, and with permission to me to make minor modifications with Julie.
I can I'll make a motion to approve the RFP as discussed this evening, allowing the chair with the consultation of the town procurement officer to make non-substantive changes to the document as required by law.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Since this is Zoom, we need to roll call it. So Christina is needed for quorum here, so I will need Christina to vote. Christina.
Yep.
Okay, Greg,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. Excellent. All right, so we'll get going on that. Again, we're planning to meet on the 4th. I'll have the minutes that Brian has submitted. I'll list those, annotate them. I'll also put on the agenda kind of just that, you know, that we'll discuss the resocialization. We can kind of pinpoint at that point, you know, different groups to meet with and what that schedule is going to be. And then we'll confirm our future meeting schedule as we go forward. But thanks everyone for being available. I will ask if there's any public comments or if anyone from the public would like to say anything. I know that we have a couple members of the public here. So if anyone wants to jump in, feel free. Any final comments or questions? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 6:50 p.m.
Second, any additional discussion? All right, roll call vote as well. Greg?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Christina? I'll say aye for myself, but
Sorry.
there we go. It's all right, Christina. I saw that you had to switch. I saw that you had to switch devices there, so it's okay. And an aye for myself. All right, the time is 6:50 and we are adjourned. Thanks everyone for being with us, and we'll get this out the door. Excellent. Thanks.
See ya.